I need some cheering up. I might tickle a flirf today.
Oh, flat earth researchers, debaters and debunkers.
Oh, God.
Huge-arse. Huge-arse.
Huge-arse.
Huge-arse.
Huge-arse.
Huge-arse. Huge-arse.
Huge-arse.
I love you, Hugh.
Greetings and salutations. This is Huge Arse. Yes, it looks like we're doing this. For those lucky people who don't know, this is Phuket Word, aka Nick, aka Gigantor. Last week he put out a video that was 50 minutes of absolute rambling rubbish. Lots of points to debunk. Let's get into it.
Just came out and saw that the beautiful full moon is on its way up.
Yeah, it tends to do that.
Obviously, this does not do it justice in any way whatsoever. It's a very lovely orange-looking moon at the moment. And I just thought I'd capture it.
Well, good. It's good to look at the moon. No derp so far.
Yeah, it's quite stunning. In fact, I was watching it last night and again noticed it's just one of those curiosities that the stars also seem brighter. Noticed this before in Phuket, noticed it last night from here. You know, you get this light from the moon and the stars that are in the same area seem to be shining that much brighter as well.
They're brighter, you say? Compared to what? I mean, unless you take out a light meter of some sort, how can you possibly know? It's just your perception. And that's fine, you can have an opinion, but don't pretend that it's real until you've actually measured it. Anyway, I'm sure he's going to explain that in a minute. I mean, surely he can't be a complete idiot who has no idea.
So I have no idea, really.
Okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt this time. Let's keep going.
It's still kind of interesting sometimes. Yeah, it gets a bit frustrating and boring talking to some of these people that come along.
You find it frustrating. You should drive from our side of the fence.
Try to discern between newcomers and the old-time trolls, because by now, if these globalists had been listening rather than coming along just to argue, then they would understand the difference between, you know, making an observation and then assuming the shape of the Earth from that observation, to physical measurements.
I can only conclude that this is projection. Almost every single scientific measurement ever taken was not taken by a flat earther. They were taken by someone who understood that the Earth was a sphere. It's not presupposing the measurements told them that. They took the measurements so that they could figure out whether or not it was a sphere. If you want to research some of these measurements yourself, go to mctoon.net/r. Plenty of examples there from way back in the 19th century up until today of the Earth's curve being measured. Not to mention more amateur measurements such as these.
Really just got to come down to this substance here, water, and try and find some curvature.
You mean like the curvature I just pointed you to the measurements of, and the measurements taken by amateurs as well? Ignoring evidence can only take you so far, Nick.
So if you haven't seen it by now, you probably have, but Dell, Beyond the Imaginary Curve, has suggested about the most practical, measurable experiment you could ever think of.
I'm sorry, did I hear that correctly? You mean Dell. You know, Dell from Beyond the Imaginary Curve. That Dell. Scottish Dell. This Dell.
You complete and utter fucked up. There's some clever clogs on Tinterwebs have told me how to science the shit out of stuff, right? So I'm here to make the job easier. So what I'm doing is I'm standing here observing the light bulb. With my Superman vision, I'm going to quantify the light bulb And therefore, once I quantified the light bulb with my vision, I then know the dimensions of the floor. Bye.
My web-footed friend.
And also, in terms of practical experiments, the Dell who does this sort of experiment?
I find this highly embarrassing. My hypothesis is that through my observation of seeing stuff on TV, water does indeed conform to the exterior of shapes and objects. Water can indeed be on lower elevation, i.e. a slope without flowing, and standing bodies of water can display convexity upon their surface. Now I'm going to show you my tests. Here is my tests. How do I establish level? How do I see? Let me see here. It's running off. Dan, I can't get it to stay on the ball. Am I missing something?
Probably, mate.
What am I missing?
Try once again.
It's just running off, making a mess of my table. How about this? It's running off. I can't get it to contain itself on the outside of the shape.
I mean, do you really think a complete idiot like that can come up with any sort of practical experiment? Unless, you're using a different definition of the word practical than I am. Anyway, on with the stupid.
Keep saying it. All that was ever discovered was a way to manipulate numbers and a way to interpret observations. And we all know by now that observations are perspective. And in fact, if you think about it, if you're trying to make a map and you're talking about a direction from this point over there towards the moon, let's say you're going towards the moon, yeah? The moment you change this, what would you call this, a z-axis in this kind of three-dimensional space, if you're pointing out that way, the moment you do this and try and interpret that z-axis on a surface like that, you're changing everything, yeah? This z-axis goes off into this distance, and of course, the slightest change in angle, with the hand or bearing, ends up increasingly vastly different. Okay, right now I'm just pointing very closely to a spot that's maybe, 100 meters gap if it's just over there. But then the further away you get, that gap gets wider and wider and wider and wider until it's thousands and thousands of miles.
Oh, God. Why does this even have to be explained? First of all, you're getting the coordinate axes wrong. What you are looking at is the y-axis. Y-axis is forward and backwards. The x-axis is left and right, and the z-axis is up and down. Get the basics right before you presume to tell other people that they're wrong. And especially if you're trying to make a point about perspective. You've got it arse about. It would get wider if you got closer to it. It'd never be thousands of miles. As you move away, things get smaller, not bigger. And how you view things doesn't change them, it just changes how they appear. Whatever it was you were looking at is still as big as it ever was, if you measured it. That's why we measure things and don't just go off our own perceptions.
Yeah, so the moment you start trying to translate this z-axis of perspective into this downward kind of plan view on a map, you're faced with issues. And you have to then, you have to convert those coordinates into bearings and degrees.
Yes, that's called a projection. Every map is a projection of the globe. They only work because they're a projection of the globe.
What's that, Slim? Yes, we experience a Euclidean world through spherical. Yes, exactly that, my man. Exactly that, isn't it? And in that that non-Euclidean world is perspective, is this, and that's as simple as it is. The observations are conversions of perspective, the sphere of perspective. The measurements for curvature do not exist because they're being done on a level Earth.
Well, apart from these. And these.
It's sad when you argue with people that... I'm arguing with people that I believe are genuinely pilots, but they refuse to, and they even understand the difference between making a physical measurement, making a demonstration, and calculating, on a kind of a model, on a model. They do understand. It's not that they don't understand.
You should believe that they are genuine pilots because you've got no reason to believe otherwise. And of course they understand. Not only do pilots have so much more training and education than someone like you might have, they've had a lot of experience of the real world, especially if they're international pilots, flying over the Earth and seeing the curvature of the Earth for themselves. For example, you can't fly Melbourne to Perth, then up to Darwin and back down to Melbourne and form a triangle where the angles add up to 180. That's only possible on a sphere. And any pilot who's done that or something similar, say New York to Anchorage, back to Los Angeles and then over to New York, understands from first-hand real-world experience that we're on a sphere. You can't argue with them. They know. They've proven it to themselves. Anyway, I suspect we're going to have to do a part 2 and maybe 3 and 4 about this. I'm only 8 minutes into this video and it's 50 minutes long, for God's sake. So much stupid to debunk. And so far, it's been complete. So there you go. Like and subscribe if you like this video and you like what I do. Feel free to make a comment as well. And you can find me on Discord if you want to have more interactions with me. Nothing left to do but cue the corgi.
You're despicable.